Greetings, Internet. HeiseNerd here. Welcome to this week's episode of HeiseNerd Speaks, the program where I sit in front of a microphone and speak my mind on some things. Now we are a part of the DNA Digital Network. As part of the DNA Digital Network, you can find this podcast and others from the network on iTunes, Stitcher, and other apps where podcasts may be found. Thanks again to the DNA Digital Network for letting us be part of the team. If you need any more details, feel free to look at dnadigitalnetwork.com. Now on to the show. Welcome to HeiseNerd Speaks, folks. We got some different topics to talk about this week. Particularly, we're going to talk about Toys R Us a little bit again, and some more news in the toy industry. And also, we are going to talk about Atari. We might talk about another subject if I have a little bit of time as well. Be kind of a quick hit one. All right, so let's start talking about Toys R Us again. So news came out, first of all, that the original founder of Toys R Us passed away at 94. Believe it was just either yesterday or today, which is really sad considering that now that his empire has kind of fallen and now he's passing away. It's kind of a sad situation. I know that the latest news as far as Toys R Us themselves is that they are liquidating stores here in the U.S. There may be some sort of deal going with them in the Canadian division, which is still intact. But I think that the future for Toys R Us is going to be pretty bleak. But on the horizon, surprisingly enough, a former toy company and toy store company has kind of come out of the ashes of this, and that is KB Toys. For those that don't know about KB Toys, they were a popular toy store chain that was found in malls and some strip malls and outlet malls. They had different kind of divisions. There was Toy Works, I think, was the ones that were in strip malls, and then Toy Outlet was the ones that were in the outlet malls, and then the regular were in the just regular shopping malls. I think that this is an interesting story, considering their failures in the past. I guess let me start with some personal reflection on KB itself as a company. There's a lot of memories of my childhood. Really, like I have more childhood memories of KB than I do of Toys R Us, just because of the fact that there was a KB in our local mall. As I was growing up as a kid, and there was a KB in the mall where my grandparents lived in Iowa. So I mean, we would frequent the mall and the KB often, and there's little things that bring me back to my childhood when I think about these. So some notable things. I remember that I could get original Atari 2600 games for like wicked cheap, because they were clearanced out. It was after the crash, so they were trying to get rid of them. So I remember picking up some games. Notably, I remember getting Raiders of the Lost Ark from a KB Toys, and yeah, that's a interesting game, needless to say. But there was that. Another thing that I significantly remember about KB Toys was that they just had at the front counter like all these different novelty candies that you wouldn't really find anywhere else. One of the notable ones that I could always think of, there are a couple different ones. There were these like slide whistle suckers. I think they were called Melody Pops or something like that. I remember those. I remember specifically there was, I know at first it was bubble gum in like a tube, but it was like a toothpaste type tube. And the first one I remember was like modeled after Ghostbusters, and it was like green, and it was Slimer. And I remember there was another one that they came out with, which was just some kind of generic other one. It was like a pink. It was like a watermelon flavor or something like that. I remember later down the line. I always thought those were fascinating, and you can never find anything like that again. And then there was also a series of gum. It was by Tops. I don't remember what it was called, but it came in little cartons that looked like milk cartons. There was like strawberry, grape, apple. I remember when they were like little, almost like pebble-sized pieces that you just had to put a few in your mouth and just chew them up. It was bubble gum. I remember things like that. I remember they were kind of the toy store where, since it was in the mall, they would have like tables where they would have the things I always remember were like they had the mechanical toy animals, like either puppies or pigs or something like that, and they would just be walking around on these little tables on the outside, and they would be making their noise to attract kids in, which was genius because, let's face it, you're not going to walk through the mall and not drag your parents into the store, be like, hey, you can go to the store. Of course they're going to drag you in. You wouldn't get a toy every time, of course, but I remember those things as a kid. But then as I grew older, as a teenager, I recall, I remember going to KB Toys as a teenager, and, obviously you were not as enchanted by toys, of course, as a teenager, but you also noticed that the pricing their markup was just insane at KB Toys compared to buying the same toy at like a Walmart or anywhere else, which I think Toys R Us kind of suffered from this same sort of thing too. But I think that, I get it. They're paying that overhead for a mall, and there's kind of a premium in there because, it's a toy store in the mall, and I think that was a lot of it. And they thought that they could charge that, and they could. They probably made a good amount of money back in the day when malls were a really viable shopping area. But nowadays, and I think that this is what kind of led to their downfall, was keeping themselves in these malls, when malls in general, indoor shopping malls, at least in our area, had been suffering. And they still are. I think that the indoor shopping mall has kind of become a dying, I don't want to say fad, I don't know what the word would be, just a dying vehicle for retail. I think that if you're looking for actual brick and mortar retail, it seems that the strip malls have become the popular place for specialty stores. It's cheaper rent. I think that that's where a lot of them started going, especially because, you had the popular anchor stores of things like Walmart's, Target's, bigger boxes like Toys R Us, even, that would attract people that weren't found inside of your shopping malls. I don't think some of these specialty stores, you're not going to see the same crowd shopping at KB Toys that's shopping at Macy's or at Von Maur or any of the more middle to upper scale department stores. And I think that that's where some of the suffering is kind of come to play. As far as like differences and why KB Toys is more significant to me, like I said, Toys R Us didn't open in my local area until I was close to a teenager. And even when they did open one, the closest one was Bloomington. And I grew up in a smaller town, about 30 miles south of Bloomington, Illinois. And we would go to shop that way occasionally. We didn't usually go to Toys R Us. I think my parents didn't want to drag me there because they knew that I would try and sucker them into buying a toy, and, well, they were kind of stingy. I don't remember going there much as a kid. I remember my first experience at a Toys R Us being, and I could be wrong, but I remember, as far as I can remember, it was before they even opened any in our area, but I remember going to one in the Cincinnati area when I was really young because I had cousins who lived in Cincinnati, and we were there visiting, and we took a trip out to the Toys R Us. I don't remember what I got when I was there, but I remember going to the Toys R Us. And then I remember when they finally opened one around us, I would go more often once I was older as a teenager. I was able to actually get out. And then they opened one in our town. I was 15 at the time when it opened. And it lasted about, I'd say it was about 5 years, because I know it opened shortly. It closed shortly before my oldest child was born, and that was in 2000, at the end of 2002. Because I remember getting some of the baby stuff for him when it was like liquidated. So that was kind of another bittersweet memory. But yeah, like I said, most of my memories of Toys R Us had been from when I was older. Not really. The nostalgia as a child isn't there as much for Toys R Us as there is for KB. So I mean, it is interesting to see what's going to happen. And I kind of I think I'm going to take some time here to kind of talk about what I think KB needs to do to survive. First of all, rumor is that they're going to go back into shopping malls, indoor ones. I really don't think that that's a good idea. Maybe in some of the more popular ones, your bigger ones that are in metro areas that are going to get more foot traffic, fine. I realize that the rent's probably going to be low because these malls are just looking for tenants now, but you also got to be where the people are going to be. I think it would be better to be inside of strip malls with high volume that they can make their mark and they can, sell their wares. The only problem is too, it might still serve better to put yourself into strip malls with anchor stores that don't sell toys. If you go into the same strip mall as, say, a Walmart happens to be there, that same parking lot, or a Target, unless you competitively price, you're not going to get any business. They're just going to walk into Walmart and buy the same thing, or they're going to go onto Amazon and buy the same thing. You got to be competitively priced, KB. If you mark up too high, you're not going to make it. The other thing with KB is I think that they really need to ramp up the online retail. I think that needs to be their biggest thing that they start with. We need a toy seller online that's viable and is user friendly. I think if we don't go that route, then we're gonna have a problem. And also I think that like I said, their pricing needs to be competitive with people like Amazon, or else they're just not going to be viable. I think we live in a day and age where, and it's sad, but brick and mortar stores are becoming the place where people go and use it as a showroom, and then they turn around and they go order it online on Amazon or somewhere else that they can get it for cheaper. So I feel like that these retailers need to find a way that's they are going to competitively price, or else they're going to have this same problem. I really just hope that they learn from the mistakes that they had made in the past, and they make themselves viable for this new generation. They need to find a way to have toys, and this is really dependent on the toy makers too, because as I've said before, kids are just not interested in toys like they used to be. I mean, from my experience, as a father, and as having been a kid, I mean, as a kid, I grew up playing with toys. I wasn't the action figure kind of guy. I played with more make-believe toys like Nerf guns and toy swords and things like that. I preferred to imagine myself in different scenes, especially just as a gamer. I would totally be like, oh, we're gonna play Zelda or whatever outside, and that's what I did. And I think that maybe we need to work on that as an idea too. Give kids that sense of imagination again, but I don't see that necessarily happening. But like I said, my experience as a father, I mean, now my oldest, he played with toys quite a bit. I mean, especially, most toddlers still do, but once they grow older, I mean, they get more interested in things. Once my oldest started playing video games, he kind of spent less time playing with toys. And my youngest, the only toys that he's into right now are the different surprise toys and blind bag toys and things like that are kind of popular nowadays. And the novelty of that is he's just going to open it up. He's going to look at it and play with it for a few minutes, and he's going to put it down, and he's going to forget about it and wait for the next one to open it up and do that. The novelty and the fun is the surprise and not really the toy itself. So I don't know, maybe a toy maker needs to come up with something that the gift that keeps on giving with that sort of thing. I'm not sure how, but I don't know. Think of something. I'm sure that there's something that, y'all can come up with that would be viable in this day and age that's like that. But yeah, I mean, kids not playing with toys, so I think that they need to come up with some ideas and things that toy makers need to come up with. What they really need to do, I mean, if games, video games, apps, things for your phone and your tablets are what's popular, maybe the toy makers, Mattel, Lego, and the like, they need to get themselves into the electronic apps. They've got to get themselves get a foot in the door with that. Start publishing games for mobile. Make money off of that. I mean, there's plenty of things. I mean, and I know that they've tried this before, and some things have taken off, some things have fallen apart. But if you want to do toys that interact with games on your tablets and things like that. It's really just a matter of meshing those things. I mean, look at Nintendo as an option, as an inspiration. Nintendo was a company that was founded as a playing card company turned toy company turned video game company, and still a lot of their toy maker roots show in the things that they make. I mean, just examples of Amiibo. Now we have Labo coming for the Switch. There's plenty of different things that they come up with. Look at the history of companies like that as an inspiration to find out how you can be relevant and evolve yourself as a company as time progresses, so you're still relevant for the next age. And I think that Nintendo is a just perfect company to look at and get that inspiration. I think I just would say in closing, I look forward to seeing if KB comes around and seeing what they do, but I do walk in with a level of skepticism. Speaking of skepticism, let's talk about the next topic. All right, so we're going to talk about Atari, and we're going to talk about their hardware. So for the layman, Atari has been talking about something they call the Ataribox for several months. Not a whole lot of details on it. Some details on that it's going to run on Linux, and it'll have the ability to play some of their old classic games, but nothing like newer. Price points have been coming out about this too, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But in the long run, they finally come out this last week or so. I think it was at the game GDC that they had finally kind of revealed the console. They've shown what it's going to look like. They've shown controllers for it. And they've said that they're kind of approaching this with with the Linux with the Linux architecture to kind of avoid the trouble that top boxes like this that have used mobile architecture using Android architecture and things have suffered from, and they they're just trying to speak and talk up this console, and essentially it's supposed to be like a gaming PC for the living room. And so here's my thoughts. First of all, gaming PC for the living room is not a concept that's going to take off. It is not taken off yet. Steam tried it with their Steam machines and it was a flop. We're not going to get to that point. We're not going to get to the point where gaming PCs replace gaming consoles in the living room. Not yet. It ain't going to happen. And there's reasons behind that. First of all, ease of usability. I don't think that gaming PC is as user-friendly as a console. It's not going to be as simple as I've got a game disc, I put it in, I play the game. That's what you need for living room comfortability with a console or a gaming PC. If it's as simple as that, then you're good. But if it's not, well, guess what? You're not going to succeed. Another big point here is the price point. From what I've heard, there's a version I think that's going to be $249, $299. With the architecture that's in this, they're talking about it being technologically on par with the Switch. Why would I spend $249 for a console that I'm very skeptical about, that does not have any games announced for it? And even so, I think that we're going to be seeing indie titles on this more often than we're going to be seeing anything from AAA or anything like that. AAA developers. So to me, if I'm going to spend $240 plus, I'm going to go around and buy a Switch if I haven't already. That just seems to me like that would make the most sense, considering the fact that the Switch also is a portable console. It would make way more sense to do that. Not to mention the fact that right now, if you wanted to buy the regular Xbox, like the Xbox One S or the original PS4 instead of the Pro or the Xbox One X, you're good to buy those as well, and those are more powerful than this is going to be, or at least on par. And there's already a considerable library of games, and plenty of developers are following them. And it's going to be much more user-friendly. Now, they do say that it's going to have, the front end is going to be user-friendly on this machine, but let's face it, it's really not going to be what it needs to be. First of all, this is only Atari by name. The original Atari team isn't making this. They're cashing in on a name and hoping that people will buy it. This is going to fail, just like any of these independent machines have. I don't think, unless you are fronting some serious money right now and really wooing developers, nobody is going to step in and become viable amongst the big three. Nobody's going to step up against Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo these days. I think we're getting to the point where even those three, it's the environment's going to change. I would almost see Microsoft changing things up first. I think that they would be more likely to start. I mean, as much as they're kind of meshing Windows and Xbox together, I almost see them kind of moving toward their next system being more of a PC. But they kind of have an idea of how to make it more user-friendly. this is all theory, of course, but I just see things changing in the in the gaming industry in the end, and this machine by Atari is not going to be a success. I think it will go the way of the Ouya and other machines like it previously, and it'll be a blip on our radar for a second, and it'll be gone before we even know it. If the Steam machines didn't take off, with Valve being a pretty viable company, I just don't see how something like this is going to be a success as well. But that's my thoughts on that. So I do have one quick item to kind of talk about. I did see an article today about Marvel and Chris Evans, and that Chris Evans in a recent interview has kind of stated that following Avengers 4, he will probably be done with the role of Captain America. I could see that happening, as I mentioned in my last episode of HeiseNerd Speaks. I kind of talked about my thoughts on Captain America and where that should go. I would almost imagine we would have had something happen to him in this third one, but if he does make an appearance in the fourth film, that'd be good too. But I'm ready to see. I'm not saying the role of Captain America needs to be gone, or not necessarily. Captain America as a entity should still be around. I think we just need to move like we did in the comic books. Steve Rogers, Cap, dies, but somebody else takes the mantle of Captain America. It's been Bucky in the comics before, and I think it's been Falcon before in the comics too. So, I mean, I would be just as fine with that happening. That being said, I loved Chris Evans in the role. I think that he did a great job with it and has still been doing a good job with it, and I look forward to seeing what he's going to do with it in the next two films. But I think it's bold that he's ready to pass that along to somebody too. I think that this is a good move for Marvel Studios to kind of usher out the old guard and bring in the new generation, and keep things fresh in the MCU, just based on the fact that, you know, we're 10 years in, and we've kind of developed these characters, and we're getting the big blockbuster, you know, bringing them together. We thought it was big enough bringing them together for the first Avengers film, and this is like that times 10, and so this will be interesting. But yeah, just to close off, I am excited to see what's going to happen with that, and I would hope Chris Evans the best with his career too. I think that he's not to one that I would see to be pigeonholed. I think that he could do some you know, different things with his acting, and I know that he's done some directing work and stuff too, so I look forward to see what he does with that too. But yeah, looking forward to that. Just to close off, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that listens to this program, and you know, it's been good to be kind of back in the saddle. I'm back doing Let's Plays again. I just started a Let's Play of Crystallis for the NES. I do encourage you guys to take a look at that and watch that. I should have some more episodes of that coming up. I've got more in the can, so I should be able to get those up pretty soon. And also just support, you know, other members of the DNA Digital Network, particularly my buddy and partner in crime, The Real Gino. For anybody who is not a subscriber to his channel, please look him up. It's just the Real REEL Gino. You know, he's working toward getting that subscriber base and the you know, the view count that's needed. I think that, you know, for someone who's kind of put their time in and made their dues, I think that he deserves, you know, to be successful, not necessarily overly successful, but I'm just saying, I think that he deserves to get the ability to get that compensation from YouTube. I think that, you know, he's put his heart and soul into it, and I really do appreciate him as an inspiration and as a friend. and I do appreciate, anybody that has been listening to this program or his. And again, just, check us out. The DNA Digital Network helps us to be able to be available on iTunes, Stitcher, and where other podcasts can be found now. So we do have to thank them. Please take a look at them at dnadigitalnetwork.com. We're doing some pretty good stuff. Also be on the lookout. Next week, there should be a new episode of the GB3 COD podcast that I do with my buddy, The Real Gino. And we also have a first movie review that we're going to be doing for Ready Player One. So be on the lookout for that. And again, just, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe on this channel. I do appreciate the feedback. And I will catch everybody on the next episode of HeiseNerd Speaks. HeiseNerd, out.